Little Lunch, The Germblock, by Katz and Mitch Vane. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! Melanie was so excited. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! This was going to be the best little lunch ever. As soon as the bell rang for little lunch, she ran to the girls' toilet and took a quick wee. Then she raced across the asphalt to her favourite bench beside the red brick wall. She quickly sat down and popped open the lid of her lunchbox. Yum! A big leftover slice of cake from her little brother's birthday. It was a chocolate cake with chocolate fudge in the middle, chocolate icing on the top, chocolate Smarties all over the icing, and a little slice of strawberry right in the middle to balance out all the chocolatey goodness. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! She'd been dreaming of this moment all morning. She picked up the slice, brought it up to her mouth, and prepared to plunge into ultra chocolate happiness when Germblock! Tamara Noodle was standing in front of her, crossing her arms like a gigantic X. And then Atticus appeared out of nowhere and yelled, "Germblock!" And he crossed his arms like an X too. Deborah Jo ran over, crossed her arms and yelled, "Germblock!" Batty also joined in.
"Germblock!"
he yelled, crossing his arms. Last of all, Rory showed up and yelled, "Germblock!" crossed his arms, did a monkey squat and made a wet, tooty sound with his lips. He had his own special Germblock routine. He was quite creative. Melanie was confused. She had no idea why she'd been germblocked, but she knew the rules. She sighed, put her slice of birthday cake back in her lunchbox, closed the lid, stood up and shuffled across the playground to sit by herself on the steps outside the junior school learning centre. This was the Germblock punishment, you see. And the junior school learning centre was Germblock jail. Germblock is what happens when someone sees someone else doing something disgusting, like, shall we say, picking their nose or scratching their bum or spitting on the ground. If you saw someone do that, you yelled, "Germblock!" and crossed your arms like an X to protect yourself from their germs. Ugh. Nobody was too sure how it worked, but it was very scientific. And now, sitting alone in Germblock jail, Melanie was too upset to eat her birthday cake. What had she done to make Tamara germblock her? She was a clean person who would never pick her nose or scratch her bum or spit on the ground. She didn't even understand how crossing your arms actually blocked any germs. If that really worked, then you'd see a lot more doctors and nurses doing it in hospitals. What could she do? She'd just have to be patient and wait for Tamara to un-germblock her. It might take 2 or 3 minutes, so she counted the seconds in her own special Melanie way, using Mr. Snookies. 1 Mr. Snooky, 2 Mr. Snooky, 3 Mr. Snooky. While she counted, the rest of the kids gathered around Tamara on the other side of the playground. Atticus asked the question everyone was thinking. "So, Tamara, why did we germblock Melanie?" Tamara gave him a very serious look. "Because she went to the toilet and then she did not wash her hands." That didn't sound right to Deborah Jo. "Are you sure she didn't wash her hands? That doesn't sound like Melanie at all. She always washes her hands." Atticus nodded. "It's true. Melanie has very clean hands." Batty thought about the situation. Well, maybe it was just an accident. Maybe Melanie didn't wash her hands because she forgot. Like, you know how sometimes you forget to have a shower for a few days? Everyone looked at him and shook their heads. No. Batty quickly added, no. No, me neither. Then he tried to look busy, staring at the clouds in the sky. Tamara got back to the matter at hand. "I'm telling you, Melanie absolutely did not wash her hands. When the bell went for little lunch, we both went straight to the toilet. Melanie finished before me, and I absolutely did not hear her turn on the taps to wash her hands. So I had no choice. It was a definite germblock." "What do you mean, you didn't hear?" asked Deborah Jo suspiciously. I mean, I was in the toilet cubicle and I never heard the tap go on. So, if you were in the toilet cubicle, you didn't actually see that she didn't wash her hands? No, because there was nothing to see. Murmured Deborah Joe, strolling over to Atticus. A very interesting story, don't you think, Atticus? Murmured Atticus right back. Very interesting. Tamara began to fidget. Deborah Joe began to pace. Atticus began to stroke his chin. Batty began to stare at two clouds that were moving closer to each other, and Rory began to work on his Germblock routine, trying to give his monkey dance a little bit more leg bounce and pep. While all this was going on, Melanie sat by herself in Germblock jail, wondering when Tamara would finally come along to un-Germblock her. It was taking forever. She was already up to 312 Mr. Snookies. She really wanted to eat her slice of cake, but it's too hard to eat and count at the same time. So she just counted. 313 Mr. Snooky, 314 Mr. Snooky. On the other side of the playground, Tamara was sitting on the bench, nibbling nervously on a carrot. Deborah Joe paced back and forth in front of her, her hands tucked behind her back. She'd seen lawyers walk like that on TV, lawyer shows, and she figured it must be how all lawyers walk around. "I'm confused, Tamara," she said as she paced past. "How did you know what Melanie did or didn't do if you were in the toilet cubicle the whole time?" "Yes, how did you know, Tamara?" Atticus began pacing with his hands behind his back because Deborah Joe was doing it, so he thought he should do it too. "It's not like you could see through the toilet door." Tamara wriggled around a bit. "Even if I could see through the toilet door, I wouldn't have seen Melanie washing her hands because she wasn't there and she didn't wash them." Deborah Joe stopped pacing and spun around to face her. "Maybe you were flushing while she was washing, Tamara tried to stand up, but Atticus gently pushed her back down onto the bench. "Yes, Tamara," he said, "maybe your flush drowned out her hand wash, and that's why you didn't hear." No, I flushed and then I opened the cubicle door straight away. I didn't stand there and stare at the toilet flushing. I'm not a monster. I would have seen her at the sink. She wasn't there, I'm telling you now." Deborah Joe strolled up to Atticus and whispered, "I think someone's starting to crack." Atticus whispered back, "Definitely starting to crack." Deborah Joe nodded. Atticus smirked. Tamara gulped. Batty watched two clouds join up into one bigger cloud. Rory worked on a flappy little tongue poke thing that he could add to his Germblock routine. And far away in Germblock jail, Melanie continued to count, 733 Mr. Snooky, 734 Mr. Snooky. She could see her friends way over on the other side of the playground, hanging out together, talking, having fun. Why was she still germ-blocked? 735, Mr. Snooky. This wasn't fair. This really wasn't fair, and this wasn't right. It was boring here, boring and lonely. 736, Mr. Snooky. Back at the bench beside the red brick wall, Atticus leaned over Tamara, casting a shadow over her face. "All right, Tamara, let's go over it one more time. You were in the toilet. You heard Melanie leave." I've told you everything I know. I was in the toilet. Melanie flushed. She left. Then there was another flush." Deborah Joe swiveled on her heels. "Another flush? What other flush?" "I don't know." Tamara scratched her head, trying to remember. "Someone must have been in the other toilet because it flushed." "Who?" said Deborah Joe, getting excited. "Who was in the other toilet?" It was me," said a voice. Everyone turned to look at Rory. "Well, I was busting." Atticus couldn't believe it. "Rory, You? You were in the girls' toilets? Why were you in the girls' toilets? Rory had no idea what all the fuss was about. Well, who wouldn't want to be in the girls' toilets? They have that nice bubbly soap that smells like peppermint chewy, and the boys' toilets just have soap that smells like floor cleaner made of horsewee. Usually I can sneak in there without anyone noticing, but this time Wait, Atticus interrupted. You've been in there before? Yuck! Cried Deborah Jo. That's gross and disgusting. No, said Rory. The boys' toilets are gross and disgusting. I just wanted to see the nice girls' toilet soap that smells like chewy and then go back to class. But when I came out, Melanie was still wiping her hands on the dress, so I had to duck back in the cubicle and... Melanie was what? Atticus interrupted again, eyes wide open. Deborah Jo sensed a breakthrough. Yeah. What? Rory, what? This is super important. Tell us exactly what Melanie was doing. I told you, she was wiping her hands on her dress. Deborah Jo grabbed Rory's shoulders and stared into his eyes. Why was she wiping her hands on her dress? Because they were wet. She'd washed her hands under the tap and she had to dry them on a dress because her hand dryer was broken. Deborah Jo gasped. Atticus went, ooh. Tamara was confused. Batty watched the big cloud change back into two little clouds. Rory wondered what the problem was with him using the girls' toilets. The girls were more than welcome to use the boys' toilets any time they liked. Meanwhile, Melanie was fed up. After 975 Mr. Snookies, she decided she'd had just about enough, and she stood up and walked away from Germblock jail. She marched straight back across the playground to confront Tamara. Tamara! She yelled as she got close. I want to talk to you. I want to be un-Germblocked right now. Germblocking is stupid and mean and totally unfair. What kind of world are we living in if we can just exclude people because of some dumb rule? We shouldn't be excluding anybody. This should be a Germblock-free world. Okay, relax, said Tamara. She looked this way and that, avoiding Melanie's eyes. You're un-Germblocked. That was too easy. Really? Really? Said Melanie. Yep, it's all over, okay? Tamara stood up and walked away from the group just like that. Everyone's mouth fell open. Partly because they couldn't believe Tamara was walking away without saying sorry to Melanie, but mostly because she had a piece of toilet paper hanging out of the back of her shorts and she didn't know it was there. It must have got stuck to her shorts when she was in the toilet. Toilet paper stuck to shorts deserved a full-on massive germ block, and everyone turned to look at Melanie, waiting for her to do it. Melanie really did want to yell germ block. She wanted to yell it so bad. But she remembered how horrible she felt sitting by herself in Germblock jail, doing hundreds of Mr. Snookies. Also, she couldn't really germblock someone after giving a big speech about how people shouldn't germblock each other anymore. Hey, Tamara! She yelled out. Tamara stopped and turned around. You've got some toilet paper stuck to your shorts. Tamara looked behind her, yanked off the toilet paper. Her face went bright red. She knew what was coming. Melanie was going to give her a full-on massive germ block. But it never came. Instead, Melanie yelled out, "It's just toilet paper, Tamara. No big deal. See you in class." Tamara breathed out, feeling very relieved. Okay. Thanks, Melanie. I'll see you in class. Melanie felt quite proud of herself for not doing a germ block on Tamara. As a special reward, she opened her lunchbox, got out the slice of birthday cake she'd been dreaming about all morning, brought it up to her mouth, prepared to plunge into the ultra shock of happiness. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And then the bell went. Sugar plum sticks. For a second she thought about stuffing the whole thing into her face, but this cake was too amazing to rush. She put it back in her lunchbox again and closed the lid. She'd just have to wait a bit longer for ultra chocky happiness. Maybe until big lunch. It ended up being pretty disappointing little lunch for Melanie, but everyone was impressed with her for proving to them how stupid germ-blocking was. Everyone except Rory, of course. He was really hoping to try out this whole new germ-block monkey dance routine with extra bouncy monkey dance with added flappy tongue poke. Maybe next time, Rory. We hope that you enjoyed this audiobook production, read to you by Ingrid Staebe for StoryZone.